Okay, well, we're going to get started. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. It's a pleasure to have you at the chamber offices. I want to thank the city staff for helping us. We normally do have this at city council chambers, but they are undergoing a renovation at City Hall, and we tried to work it with the public school system, and they have board meeting. We tried to work with the library, and they are booked, so events are happening all over Norman. So we came home, so it's good to have each of you here and a guest at our chamber offices. My name is John Woods. I'm the president and CEO of the chamber, and it's a real pleasure to have each of you here today. We also want to thank individuals who have enough on their plate that they'll even show up to an election debate forum that they aren't on the ballot. It says a lot about them. So I want to thank our current city council members that are in the audience, Council Members Heupel, Council Members Castleberry, Council Member Kovach, who is retiring, and thank you for your service, Council Member Kovach, and Council Member Williams, who would be on the ballot but did not draw an opponent, so he's the happiest guy in the room tonight. Congratulations. And I did not see Councilmember Holman sit behind someone else, so I didn't see him there. So we have a full crowd of the council, and we appreciate each of you being here. I want to introduce Andy Shear, who is the chairman of our board of directors, who will be asking the questions this evening, and I'll be assisting him just to make sure we keep everyone straight on order and fairness. We're just going to have a good conversation over a very small number of the issues that are facing the city with a limited time and a great number of candidates. We'll do our best to try to hit as much as we can in a limited amount of time, and let each of you enjoy the extra hour of daylight that you may have every night. So with that, Andy Shear.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. We will move fast tonight. We do have a lot of information to cover, and we have a lot of candidates, and I'm really thrilled about that. First of all, we have this many people that are interested in serving our great city, and I appreciate each and every single one of you, not only for being here tonight, but also for your service and desire to serve our community. I think that's very admirable, and I very much appreciate it for someone like me who grew up and has lived here almost all my life. I very much appreciate that. So again, I want to introduce each of our candidates, and then we'll go through the rules, the different kind of time that we'll provide, and the format, and make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then we'll begin with the first question. So I'm going to go ahead and begin, and the candidates are sitting in the order in which I'll announce them today. We'll start down at the very end with Gary Casey, who is running for office for Ward 2. Also Ward 2 is Alicia Cardula, Matthew Leal, and Clint Williams. So each of the four on this side are all vying for the Ward 2 council seat. I appreciate them very much. Moving over to your right, my left, is William Pittman, Brett Jones, and Greg Youngman, who's the incumbent. All four of them are pursuing the post of Ward 4, so we appreciate each of you being here today. Also, additionally, Jerry Lane, and also Councilor Jim Griffith, Ward 6, and we're both vying for the Ward 6 place. So again, appreciate each of them being here as well. I'll again mention that Chad Williams, Councilor Chad Williams, that John just mentioned, is running unopposed, or actually running unopposed for Ward 8, and so look forward to Chad serving an additional term. Appreciate your service as well, Chad. Thank you for that. We end with the forum format that we'll try to use tonight, and attempt to make sure that we follow that timeline. And I really did like John's word of conversation. That's really the desire here. It's not a debate, it's a conversation amongst us, and I think it's important to kind of set the foundation for the rest of the actual campaign that will take place leading up to the April 1st election. So just some general housekeeping rules. The timekeeper, which actually is Tessa Breeder, Tessa's helping us tonight, will be visible to each of the candidates along with myself, and will help monitor time. We'll try to really strictly monitor that time. Within that time limit, each candidate will be, of course, introduced each time and then given 2 minutes, first of all, to make an opening statement. And then along with that, we'll also, as soon as we have the opening statement, we'll move into a question period. I know that John, I think, mentioned this again, but if you do not receive a card on your way in, we want to make sure that as many questions as we can properly address, we get the chance to do so tonight. So if you would, in fact, I'm going to ask that those get passed over to Tessa Breeder, if that's okay. And then Tessa will bring those up to John and myself, and we'll make sure that as many of those as we possibly can cover tonight, we want to do that too. So we want your voice to be heard as well. Once we ask a question, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the questions that I ask. And then at the very end, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make closing remarks. If we do have time, and I will say that's doubtful, but we're going to do our best to move quickly, then we'll provide an opportunity for a candidate to pose a question to another candidate. But again, that is only if we have time. We're going to try to move quickly and cover as much territory, as much ground as we possibly can. So I'm going to go ahead and begin, and if I can, I'm going to go back out to Gary and give him a chance to introduce himself. So again, 2 minutes just to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about why you're running.
Thank you very much. I'm interested in running for city council because I feel I can bring some positive tributes, ideas to the city for improvements and helping with the flood issues and water issues. My dad was a bulldozer operator, U.S. Army, Korean War vet, and retired from the Air Force out of the gasoline chain and all that. And so I got much out of it, bulldozer real good. So I'm hoping clean up all the drainage ditches in Norman and have good water flood control issues where hopefully no kids get swept down the stream or anything like that. And just go back and give some positive input to the city of Norman and feel good about it. That's it.
Thank you very much. Ms. Carson?
My name is Alicia Cardula. I've lived in Norman for 16 years now. I've raised my family here. I'm an associate professor of political science at the University of Science and Arts of Oklahoma in Chickasha. So I am a commuter, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing because why? Lots of people in Norman are. Not all of us even who live in this room work in the city of Norman. So I always tell people that right away. Some people think that's bad, some people think that's good. I think that gives me an interesting perspective because I drive through lots of small cities to get to the city where I work at in Chickasha. Why am I running for city council? I raised my family here. Norman has been fantastic. We all know this. That's why we choose to live here, right? Norman is this great, unique community, and it's done so much for me and my family. And this is my way of giving something back. I teach political science. It's already something that I love, and even though I've not run for political office before, I've been actively informed and try to stay engaged. And so here I am doing that. Now is the time where my son has gone on to college, and I feel like I want the opportunity to give something back in the field that I know and love the best. So here I am.
Mr. Leal?
Good evening. Thank you to the Chamber for having us. My name is Matthew Leal, candidate for Ward 2. Grew up in small town Addington, Oklahoma. Moved to Norman after my last deployment with the United States Army. Spent 2 years with the 95th Drill Instructor Unit here in Norman. Met my wife here in Norman whenever I was selling cars at Ballard, London. We decided that this is where we wanted to raise our children. Norman has given us so much, and we see so much positive things that are here in Norman, and so much more that can be done. My son Matthew is the reason that I am running. I want Norman to be the best it can be for when he is ready to take over a leadership role. That's why I'm running. Thank you very much.
Mr. Williams?
Good evening, my name is Clint Williams, and I want to thank the Chamber for hosting this wonderful event. And I also want to say hello and congratulations already to all of my opponents. I think one of the things I want to strive for tonight is to talk about the fact that opponents are not enemies. In municipal elections, opponents are neighbors, and whomever wins, it's obvious tonight we have a very good field, and everybody has a lot of good things to say about Norman and is all very devoted to this city that we call our own. Why run? We all get the question, why am I going to run for office? And the truth of the matter is, I came to Norman in 1999 as an undergraduate student at the University of Oklahoma and have never left. And the reason is because Norman has afforded me so many opportunities, wonderful teachers, wonderful civic opportunities to work together on lots of different kinds of issues. And I have a record of bringing people together on important issues. My first job was as executive director of the Xenia Institute, an organization committed completely to bringing people together who were of different minds on various issues and to try to build a consensus and move forward in that particular case. I also am trusted right now with public money as the executive director of the Mary Abbott Children's House, and I've demonstrated administration of a public institution at an exemplary level. And I think one of the things that I'm getting as I go to doors, and the reason that I'm enjoying so much broad support from various different kinds of people in the community, is that the only thing I ever promise is that I'm going to be fair. I always say I'll never vote exactly like you want me to 100% of the time, but you can rest assured that I'll understand the issues as well as I possibly can, and you can also rest assured that at the end of the day, you're going to understand why I'm voting the way that I am.
Thank you. We'll move over to Ward 4 candidates. Mr. Hickman.
Good evening. I also want to thank the Chamber for this opportunity to be here tonight, and I want to thank the fellow Ward 4 candidates for being here and taking the time to engage in this process. My name is Bill Hickman, and I'm running for City Council for Ward 4. And Ward 4 is core Norman. It is what is unique and special about Norman and why we all talk about how we love it. It's Campus Corner, it's downtown, it's Main Street, it's the area around the university and our historic homes. I'm running for the City Council because I want to protect and preserve those neighborhoods and that unique quality character that we all love about Norman. I'm a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and a veteran served in the Air Force. I'm proud of my service to this country, and I want to bring that veteran's independent, no-nonsense perspective to city government to help it work better and smarter for all of our citizens. I also have an MBA from Auburn University, and I graduated with the highest honors from the University of Oklahoma College of Law. I've been in private practice for approximately 15 years, and half that time, I've had my own small business. So I understand the challenges and the struggles that a small business owner has to make payroll, to keep the lights on, and to do the things that we have to do to employ people, bring people together to solve problems. As a lawyer, I'm also a trained mediator, and that's a large part of what I do in my practice, is to solve problems and to bring people together. That's a critical skill set that a council member also has to be able to have, is to analytically analyze a situation, see the perspectives of different sides of the equation, and bring those people together for the common good of our community to move forward. Our town and Ward 4 cannot have 2 more years of things not being done, the ball not being advanced, and opportunities moved forward and taken advantage of. And that's why I'm running for City Council from Ward 4, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
My name is Brett Jones. I am running for Ward 4 City Council. Thank you very much to the Chamber and everyone in this room, and anyone else that will be participating in forums in the future. I ran for City Council 2 years ago, 5th generation Norman. Family's been here a long time. The city, this county has been very good to my family. A lot of entrepreneurs, but also a lot of blue collar workers in the family, and we've always been able to find a job and a career regardless of education level, socioeconomic background. It's very, very, very important for me that Ward 4 being core Norman is effectively led, and we have a lot of decisions to make in the near future, whether it's transit, business development, jobs development, what have you. And I'm really impressed with who's running for City Council this year. Youngman, we got things we disagree on. Hickman, we're gonna have things we disagree on, but we're gonna have an effective conversation of what is gonna happen in the near and long-term future for Ward 4 and the city itself. And as a Ward 4 voter myself, that's all I ask, is that people participate in the process and help us lead forward the way is most effective economically and for quality of life. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Youngman.
Thank you. First and foremost, thank you to the Chamber, Andy and John, and the rest of the Chamber staff for putting this together. I really appreciate it. I think the dialogue couldn't be more important. And I won't say I feel bad for Councilmember Williams, but I think that you should come up here and talk about the value of this conversation is really, really high. It's a great value to the community. We're going to get some new ideas from the people in my race. Ward 2 is going to have a lot of new ideas kicked around. And that's a strong contribution to our community. I will say a very sincere thank you to everyone up here on this panel. Having run a race and lost, run a race and won. You might do it for yourself in some ways, but at the end of the day, I think your neighbors appreciate you doing it for them. And that's why I'm doing it. Logistically, a campaign is not, I wouldn't say it's a nightmare, but it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. There's tons of little tiny pieces, and they'll have to be done in the right order and done on time. If they're done late, they're of no value, absolutely no value. There's no consolation prizes. So the emotional investment in this type of process, I think, is really great. And at the end of the day, you're either elated or you're pretty low. So I just want to thank everybody up here for jumping in and being really brave doing that. I only got 2 minutes. It's my pleasure to run for re-election on my record. I think every politician should simply say that. I've accomplished a lot in the 19, 20 months I've been on council. I'm very proud of all of that. I encourage people to engage me in that discussion. If you disagree, please say so and talk about it. I haven't agreed with everyone in Ward 4, but I found a remarkable amount of agreement. I've gotten so few calls from voters and neighbors to say they disagree. But when there was a disagreement, I've learned a lot by listening to that person. So what you get with me with another term is what I've done for the last 2 years, and that is simply to do my homework and stand up and say what's right.
Thank you. We'll move on to Ward 6 and Mr. Lang.
Hey, I also want to thank everybody for being here, not only the council putting it on, but the smiling faces I see out there are very comforting. Being a complete rookie, having never done this before, I want to know from Councilman Youngman why he didn't warn me about how I was supposed to do these things at a special time. I'm now learning. But anyway, that be that as it may. I've lived in Norman for almost 30 years now. My family is from Norman. Most of them still live in Norman. One did escape to Texas. I'm still trying to get her back. And that is also the reason why I'm running. I love Norman. There's been plenty of opportunities when I worked for Sonic and the fast food industries that I could have moved elsewhere. And it always came down to when Connie, my wife, and I were talking about it, Norman is where we want to be. We love Norman. And the reason why Norman is special, quite frankly, is because of the neighbors. And it's because of the neighbors and people I meet every day that I felt that I wanted to run. I have an advantage now in the last 10 years after I retired from fast food, and Connie told me to get out of the house and do something else, and I became a third-grade teacher. So for the last 10 years, I've been a third-grade teacher. Looking at my third graders every day, I realized I'm looking at the future of our town. And I get to talk to their mom and dad and their grandmas and grandpas, and I get to hear firsthand what their concerns are. And it was those concerns that I think just bringing that daily input from third graders to the city council would bring a totally unique viewpoint, which, based on my accounting background when I had to balance a budget in Sonic, and based on talking to mom and dad almost every day, I think I can do a good job as a council person for Norman.
Thank you. And before I turn it over to Councilmember Griffith, I do want to just make a last call for any cards or questions. Get a few of those. I want to make sure I bring those up, and we'll try to collect those last remaining cards that maybe you may have a question you'd like to bring up as soon as we finish. Councilmember Griffith, thank you for interrupting me, by the way. We'll make sure that we get those questions up here so we can put those into the list of questions that we've already kind of put together as a sample list. So, Councilmember Griffith.
I'd like to thank the chamber and the audience for being here tonight. This is always a scary time every time I've run. This is my fourth race. I've lived in Norman most of my life. My kids have been raised in Norman Public Schools. We've all graduated from the University of Oklahoma. And they've all gone to successful careers. I was introduced to service in this community by a friend of mine who asked me to take his place on the Parks Board. And found that one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, short of what led from there, led to leadership positions in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts with my boys. The opportunity to run for council came about when my council member, Mike Tower, asked me told me I really should run for council, and I certainly denied. I said, no, I'll never do that. And then David Hopper decided not to run again, and Claudia reminded me, my wife, Claudia reminded me that if you've ever thought about running for council, now's the time. And I thought, well, shoot, why not? So between knocking on doors and a modest $800 budget, I was elected. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So for the last 5.5 years, this has become my avocation. And I have thoroughly enjoyed the process of learning how the city works and the involvement of the staff and the involvement of our community. Some wards more than others. But the satisfaction that you can get from listening to a constituent's issue or concern and addressing the right staff person and getting that resolved very quickly has been very gratifying to me. A lot of the policies that we come to craft have been oft very vigorously debated, but the final result tends to be something that's very workable for our city. Never perfect, but always a functional ordinance or resolution that moves us forward. And I want to continue that process. We've got storm water, wastewater, and other issues we have to deal with, so I want to be a part of it.
Thank you very much. And now we'll move into the question phase, and I'm going to go back to Ward 2. And I'll start with you, Mr. Williams. So I'll start moving the other direction here a little bit. First question is, do you support, and actually I think April 1st, as you know, I think everybody knows, council have something possible on the ballot related to public safety sales tax. And so, simple question, do you support the extension of the public safety sales tax? You vote on April 1st, and if so, why? And if not, why not?
Simple answer, yes, I do. I don't feel like public safety jobs should be funded temporarily if the jobs themselves are permanent. And so I am very much in favor of the renewal, and not just a renewal, but a permanent renewal of the public safety sales tax. Now, is this a perfect measure? Is it absolutely the way that everybody in the city would want it to be? I don't think there's anybody in this room who would agree with that, but I feel that it is the best measure that we could get, and I feel that our public safety workers are going to be much better served not having to worry whether or not they're going to have a job when this comes up for renewal again.
Thank you. Mr. Leal, same question.
Yes, I will fully support the PSST renewal, mainly because these public safety servants, it's unfair to them and their families to put this as a temporary thing. For every 7 to 10 years, they have to worry if we're going to renew it or not. I feel that if these positions are what I call mission critical, then we need to find the money and fund those positions permanently. Also, equipment is a very important thing to these guys. 8 years in the Army, I ran missions every day in Baghdad, taking a colonel from one side of town to the other. So I understand the importance of having your communications right, having all of your support lined up in a row. So the PSST renewal is something that I would definitely support and encourage neighbors to support as well.
Thank you. Ms. Cardinal, same question.
Yes, yes. And one of the things that I've learned while out knocking doors and talking to retired firefighters and police officers, which I found very interesting, is that the city of Norman has had a long history of doing this. So this is nothing new since the 1970s. Apparently, a lot of long-term positions have been funded with a non-permanent tax. And so I feel like this is at least a step in the right direction to make this not the case. So I will be personally voting for it, and when I'm knocking on doors and people have asked me about it, I have told them the same thing.
It's also, I believe we should continue funding our police force and peace officers. I'd hope that they'd have a stable income where they wouldn't be all stressed about that. And that way they'd have the best normal life that they could have for the critical jobs that they provide for the community. And I hope that we could have the best equipped police force in the state, give them the equipment they need, and just what they need that really help out the community, keeping everybody safe. But I would object to any kind of monitoring like drones. Just throw that in, you know, that would put it in the Fourth Amendment rights of our citizens.
Thank you very much. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. Instead of going to Ward 4, I'll go back down to Ward 6 if I can do that. And I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Jim Griffith for the same question. Do you support the extension of the public safety sales tax being voted on April 1st? And if so, why? If not, why not?
Oh, absolutely. I wondered why it wasn't permanent to begin with, but I understand the reticence that our community has about taxes. And so I felt, although it passed resoundingly, it was a way for our community to kind of test the waters to find out if in fact council was sincere in getting accomplished what the temporary tax accomplished. And in short order, we got the staffing. We have the 41 police officers, 30 firemen, 2 fire stations, and they're well equipped. So we accomplished everything with some funding left over that we will use to offset some of the capital costs in the new tax, which is going to be permanent. And I would wholeheartedly support the permanence of the new tax and the capital projects that it's going to fund, and certainly the security that it offers our staff. So without a doubt, I support this new tax. I've been reminding people at the door to please support the tax.
Mr. Lane?
I'm also 100% in favor of the public safety sales tax. The one thing that I would also like to see with that, however, is some kind of agreement among the council that it stays dedicated to the police and fire, that it is not directed somewhere else as sales revenue grows or as extra funds become available that are above and beyond the salaries of the police and fire, that indeed those extra funds are not put into some other account, or as savings are realized from the public safety sales tax, that all of a sudden they disappear from the public safety arena and show up somewhere else. I think that's important, that they stay public safety focused.
Mr. Gunn, same question.
Yes, I mean, I support the public safety sales tax, absolutely. Actually, this was one of the most challenging issues that we had in the 2 years that I've been on council. I think I was literally asked for every possible permutation. I was asked for permanent, I was asked for temporary, I was asked for April, I was asked for August. And that's fair, and it was all from very good people that I know and that I trust. And so my focus was to put something good on the ballot. Something on the ballot that is good and that people can give a fair up or down vote to. Because it's not about the council members on the PSST, it's about the voters. It's really important to me as an individual that there be some renewal process. I know the permanence for the salaries makes a lot of sense. I'm going to credit Councilmember Kovach for thinking of this sort of two-headed, permanent, temporary approach. But I think if you keep coming back to the voters every so many years, it allows them to engage in what projects are appropriate. It also allows the council members to be held accountable. I mean, if you think there's a little too much flexibility in the language, then you need to look at council members and say, you had flexibility and you abused it, and we're going to hold you accountable for that. So you can do that at the ballot box by having this process renewed every so often. So I definitely support it.
Mr. Jones?
I do support the PSST. There has been a lot of discussion in Ward 4 about funding permanent positions with a temporary tax, and it's been a very healthy discussion that no doubt will continue on after this election is over. We can make the investment now, or we can make the investment later. And what I've found a lot with the city of Norman is when the investment is delayed, we wonder why it costs so much to get done what we didn't get done in the past. And when it comes to public safety, it is an investment in the community, and I will always support those kind of investments, and we do have to have a discussion about funding permanent positions with a temporary tax, whether that's the way to go.
Mr. Rick, same question.
Yes, I fully support public safety, and I think we should fully fund and equip our public safety officers in every way that we can, every way that we can physically and responsibly do that. And along with that, and as a part of this public service, of this PSST number 2, is resource officers for our schools. And nobody's made any comment about that. And I wanted to raise that because I failed to introduce my wife in my introduction, and she is here tonight, Shelley Hickman, who is the Communications and Community Relations Director for Norman Public Schools. And we have a real opportunity with this public service, or this public safety initiative, to have those resource officers in our schools, around our schools, to ensure the safety of our children. Because the safety of our children has got to be one of our #1 priorities. And so I think there's a real opportunity, if we craft this properly and we have those resource officers near and at our schools, that it can be a real benefit to our children in our public schools. As an attorney who does legal work for special needs children and for children that have been bullied, I can assure you that having a resource officer in and around those schools helps to protect all of our children, especially those that are most vulnerable, like special needs and children that have been subject to bullying. I also want to say one other thing, and it didn't take the first question for my opponent to begin to say both things, I think. Yes, he fully supports a permanent tax, but he likes the idea of a renewal process. I'm confident that a permanent tax does not come back for renewal, and I'm not sure I understand exactly his position, but that's kind of been the theme of the 2 years that he's been on council, and I'm sure we'll discuss that more this evening.
All right, next question. We'll go ahead and start with Ward 6 on this particular question. The city of Norman is facing a considerable budget shortfall, looking forward into FY 2016. Do you have any recommendations or opinions to help curb the potential budgetary crisis for the city? I'm going to start with Mr. Lang.
I have one. I've been poring over the city budget of Norman. Let me check that. I've tried to pore over the city budget of Norman, and it's 499 pages. Now, I ran what was called the West Region for Sonic, where I had 300 franchise restaurants, and I had my own budget for my own staff to run around. And I could put all that down into an understandable format in perhaps 3 pages or 2 pages. And one of the things that I think makes it so hard to dig into to find where the savings are is I can't understand the budget. And I used to think I was a fairly intelligent person because I've had to look at P&L statements, I've had to make recommendations to franchisees on why their stores weren't making money or were making money or how they could make more money. And I'm looking at this budget and it is a disaster. I challenge anybody to go on the City of Norman webpage where the first thing it talks about is how we need to be transparent, and try to find any transparency in a 499-page budget document. I mean, there's just, I look at that and I say, how can you find any useful information in this thing? And so, quite frankly, I wouldn't even know right at this point in time where to begin saying, here's an opportunity for cuts, here's an opportunity for savings, here's an opportunity that we could spend money to make more money, just from that standpoint alone. I mean, the first step is to understand what the problem is, and I kind of challenge anybody with that budget to tell me where the problem is. Other than you can look at past expenditures and current expenditures and say, we're going in the hole and we're losing a huge budget, surplus that we've had over the past 10 years, and we don't have it anymore. And I defy you to tell me where it went. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Griffin.
One really good idea that's come to mind is just raise more money. And I don't mean to be flippant about this. I'm sure most of you know that municipalities by state constitution are required to raise their revenues by sales tax. And that has been a huge hindrance for a lot of communities, and Norman included. We presently don't have the budget to go out and recruit aggressively companies and offer them great incentives to be here. So it is a challenge. We need to bring more people into Norman. Norman is a great community to bring people here. They spend their tourism dollars here. They spend their discretionary income here. We can bring more people through more quality of life initiatives and there's a great couple of plans that are out there that are really outstanding. The Chamber and NEDC are working intently to bring quality jobs to this community, and that will bring people who will live here and spend their money here. But the bottom line is really to raise more money. Our staff is so lean that it's been discussed in budgets past when things were tight that we might lay people off because we just didn't have the money. We worked diligently to avoid that catastrophe. But the budget shortfall, I mean, the bottom line is we've been, for many years, have spent more than we've made, and the necessary, and that's just to provide the necessary services that our citizens require. So, and I have no doubt that we will continue to work diligently to bring quality companies to this community, to raise our tax revenue, to raise our revenue base so that we can work to avoid the catastrophe that Councilmember Castleberry is so diligent to remind us of. It will never escape our vision. Thanks for that, Robert. Appreciate that.
Okay, we'll move over to Ward 4. Same question. The City of Norman is facing a considerable budget shortfall in FY 2016. Do you have any recommendations or opinions to help curb the potential budgetary crisis for the city? And we'll start with Mr. Jones.
Okay. One of the big discussions in Ward 4 right now is a Center City Visioning Committee and project. And one of the purposes of that particular project is to increase sales tax revenue in Ward 4 involving Campus Corner, downtown, and the neighborhoods in between 60 Webster Avenue. Another goal is to, of course, not encroach upon the neighborhoods or disturb any of the, of course, the natural neighborhoods. Every one of us is for protecting the neighborhoods. At the same time, we do have to raise sales tax revenue, city revenue, and Councilman Griffin just did a very good job of explaining it to me because I, like everybody else, am doing my best to understand the budget and come up with solutions to how to not have a budget shortfall in the future. And yes, Councilman Castleberry, you have been very effective in keeping Norman on top of this. Also, a shout out to Anthony Francisco. Without him, we would all be looking at each other crazy. With this Center City Council or visioning project, it's one of those solutions the citizens are looking at to help with the budget shortfall, and we have a lot of discussion on those very things. Thank you very much.
So Councilmember Youngman.
Thank you. First, I'll just respond briefly to the PSST question from Mr. Hickman. What I support is what's on the ballot, and that is permanent funding for salaries for the individuals, people that have a job and need that security, and temporary funding for capital projects, which allows us to have that conversation every so often about what capital projects are appropriate. In terms of helping the city prosper, my suggestion is fairly simple, and that's simply to invest in ourselves. We can invest in quality infrastructure, roads, streets, manage our traffic well. We can invest in great city services. All of these things make people's lives better, and actually good city services literally enrich people as they have to do less of picking up the pieces on their own dime. And while our budget is lean, the general fund is particularly strapped, our bonding capacity is pretty good. And we have a relatively low amount of bond indebtedness in our community. And we have an opportunity to do some really great quality of life projects. And that's another way we can invest in ourselves. So my suggestion is do what the literature, what the research tells us to do, and that is make the community really great. Do things that pay off now. I would consider doing less of things that say they'll pay off later, but do things that pay off now, things you can enjoy today, and it attracts people to Norman and makes it a better place to live, and we should prosper collectively if we do that.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes, I understand budgets. When I was in the Air Force, I managed multi-million-dollar contracts, and as a private business owner, I have to balance my budget or I can't make payroll, I can't keep the lights on. So it's important that our council members know how to handle their money and how to balance a budget. It's simple in the sense of you have two components. We have revenue and expenses. On the revenue side, we have to grow our base of revenue. Many ways we can do that. Organically, we can grow and promote our local small businesses. We have some wonderful entrepreneurial businesses in Ward 4. Let's help them to thrive and to grow and not have them have to shut down their doors like some of them have told me that they are worried about where our business climate is going in Norman. And can they make payroll and can they grow and do the things that they want to do? We also can attract outside retail, regional retailers to try to come to Norman to make it a destination place for people to come to. That's one way we can grow our revenue, is by bringing people to Norman to shop versus just having the people in Norman shop. If we have more people coming to Norman to shop by high quality retail opportunities, then that will grow our sales tax revenue as well. But I do agree with the other statements, but I look at it from a little bit different perspective. Quality of life is critical. And quality of life is critical because we want people to move to Norman. We want people that are skilled and educated to move to Norman and live here, because as they move here and live here, they will spend money. They'll go to our wonderful little shops and our neat little restaurants and spend money, and that grows revenue as well. But we also have to be cognizant of expenses. We cannot continue to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on plans to study things and to look at ideas that then just sit on a shelf and collect dust. We've got the Old Silk Stocking neighborhood plan sitting on the shelf, Porter plan sitting on the shelf, multiple plans that we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on simply sitting on the shelf collecting dust. That's not helping our citizens, and it's been money that we cannot get back.
Thank you. We'll move over to Ward 2, and then Ms. Carswell, I'll start with you, and I can repeat the question if you'd like.
Sure, it's been a while.
The city of Norman is facing a considerable budget shortfall.
Yeah.
Looking forward to FY 2016.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations or opinions to help curb the potential budgetary crisis that will present itself in FY 2016 for the city?
Are you sure you're not just trying to outsource your work? Isn't this what you guys do at the Chamber of Commerce? You're just trying to pick through our brains for ideas. No, it's smart, right? That's what you're supposed to do, is to look for other ideas. I'm kind of building upon what everybody's already said, because if anyone had the one idea, we wouldn't be having this discussion, right? We would have already done it. We would have already figured it out. What Greg said about infrastructure, I think, is brilliant and great. I believe in infrastructure and investing in ourselves as well. However, thinking along the lines of our bonding capacity is low, and I think that's true. We should probably continue to invest in ourselves so that we have a great quality of life here. But then I'm thinking about, well, I've been knocking on doors, and one of the things that I also hear is that lots of homeowners are nervous about that, right? So one of the questions I get continually asked is, well, are you gonna wanna put a lot of issues before voters where my taxes are gonna go up? Right, so I've really had to think about that then as a candidate, like, well, that's a great question, because I'm a property owner too, and so, you know, I also am concerned about infrastructure, and I would like to invest in ourselves, but then I think, well, but we also need to grow, right? We need revenue, right? So Mr. Hickman's also correct in that particular capacity, and one of the interesting debates I think that Norman has, that we're continually butting up against, and we have been since I've lived in Norman, is this whole smart growth model. Do we want to be more, right? Or do we want to be this kind of sleepy, small university village? And I don't have an answer for you, but I do believe that we can, you know, kind of pursue, I think, this kind of third path where we can still have smart growth, but I don't want a Dairy Queen on every corner. I'm not going to lie to you. That's not an attractive model to me. So can we pursue growth? Yes, because people have already moved in Norman. We already know this. Our schools are over full. We have traffic going on like crazy. So we have to deal with this, but I don't think it's either or. And that's what I'm hoping is that we can move forward and have that conversation instead of this big growth, no growth. Sorry. I'm gonna-
Same question.
Well, really hate to see taxes go up, just on, not having this family make things right now, but kind of look at City of Norman's failed to bring venues to Norman. I mean, the other day on the news, they were talking about country, having that country music concert, brought in like 30,000 people. I'd like to see somebody at least look at the feasibility of trying to get the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds coming out Westheimer, you know, some kind of air show, more concert type venues, country, whatever. And just see what we can do in that regard as far as trying to make Norman a more attractive place where people remember something that happened here that they can tell their kids about and be proud about it.
Mr. Williams?
I spent most of yesterday and most of the morning working on this, and it's something of a controversial position. And Mr. Castleberry and I are going to have discussions later because I don't agree with his position. But here is basically the gist of it. A budget shortfall is not the same thing as a budgetary crisis. In FY10 budget, the 3 years furthest out, 14, 15, and 16 were projected as negative numbers because of the economic downturn in 2007 and the way that ripples out in the budgets. But a budget is a projection. The closer you get to it, the more accurate you get. So in FY15, that number was, or the FY15 number was 17 million. The next budget it was 6 million, and in the current budget it's $332,865. Does that mean our work is done? No, but it's not 17 million anymore because our projection is getting closer to the accuracy of where we really are. But to give some specific examples, I think one of the things that we could talk about to increase the tax base while going beyond smart growth is something considered green growth. The idea is, so first of all, our numbers in single-family housing have declined every year since 2007. And I think incentives for the right reasons could kill two birds with one stone. Smart growth has helped, but it's time to focus on green growth. Incentivizing green growth reduces the impact on infrastructure and utilizes gray water for lawn watering by reducing impact fees. So why is this important? 40% of the water that we use is on our lawns, and half of that is actually more than necessary to keep lawns green. So I read something the other day and actually heard another piece on the radio about Las Vegas, which has utilized a green growth plan in comprehensive work with other aspects of conservation. They cut their per capita water usage by 1/3 by utilizing these incentives. That's a way to have growth beyond just smart growth that actually helps the environment and the economy at the same time.
Mr. Williams?
I always hate being last on questions like this because you almost seem like you're just repeating what you've heard. But a lot of people make some great points. I do think that there's not one person that has the answer. It's going to take a collective whole of everybody bringing their ideas together, really looking at what's going on. Because I can tell you, I look at the budget too, and it can be pretty intimidating. It's not like the budgets that I deal with on my day-to-day work. It's a whole lot more. It's a whole lot different than just debits and credits. But there are some great ideas. Quality of life. The reason that a lot of us who didn't grow up here moved here. We came here because we like the quality of life and we stayed. So when we do invest in ourselves and do invest in our quality of life and do also attract high quality jobs that are going to bring the right type of bottling job that we want here in Norman, they're going to stay and they're going to shop. And we also do need to promote our small business. There's just so much that can go on to improve, because I hate to say it, but I don't believe that there's a good tax. There's necessary taxes, but there's never going to be a good tax. So it's going to take a collaborative of the whole to find out where we can find this money and pay for our stuff and make sure that we have that quality of life that we all love here in Norman.
Thank you. Some of you mentioned quality of life, so I'm going to jump to a quality of life question. It's a long question, so I may repeat it a couple of times. Happy to do so if you'll ask me to. Over the years, we have witnessed surrounding communities make advances in terms of quality of life development. I know Morris has a new park and there's a new aquatic center. Norman has not made significant quality of life improvements since really the construction of the Sam Noble Museum in 1999. Really, the question is, what specific quality of life projects would you support for Norman? And what possible funding mechanisms would you support the use of in order to move those projects forward? I'm going to go ahead and start. I think we've started with Ward 4. If I can, I'm going to start with Mr. Hickman, please.
Yes, I fully support quality of life initiatives, and those initiatives can come in any form and any fashion that your mind can imagine. That could be anything from a swimming pool, water park type entity, to a sports complex, to something to help our homeless and those underprivileged. All of those are things that help make an inclusive community, make our community stronger. As a Rotarian and a service person who's involved in many community organizations, I'm a big advocate and a firm advocate of an inclusive community. I do a lot of work out helping individuals that need somebody to stand up and argue and fight and be their voice. And that's part of what a quality of life initiative is all about, is something that's inclusive for everybody. And along those lines, quality of life, like I said in my previous answer, is a part of what will get people to move to Norman. We all love Norman, that's why we're all here. And we need to let people know about how wonderful Norman is. And through a quality of life initiative, people will want to move here. And as people move to Norman that are skilled and highly qualified, then the jobs will come, because the companies will go where the people are. And that will help spur economic development, that'll help spur our revenues, it'll help make Norman overall stronger, so that we can truly be an inclusive community and have a representation that does represent everyone in our community, and have an opportunity to do all the wonderful things that people talk about wanting to do with city services that do cost more money. Because in our current budget situation, we cannot do all of the city service things that sound good in a campaign, because we don't have the money to do all those things. Sometimes we'll have to make hard choices. So we have to be smart, put the cart before the horse, and that is grow the revenue, provide quality of life that people will want to come here and live here. They will spend money, quality jobs will come, and then with that revenue, we can continue to enhance the quality of services that we provide to our citizens to help make Norman truly an inclusive community for all of our citizens.
Over to Councilmember Young.
I don't know if you appreciate it or not, but it's tough to go first on a question like that. 'Cause I've written down 15 or 20 things, and you didn't have a chance to even put your thoughts together, so it was a good answer. Pisces project, I think, is a great project. It's already well developed. They know what they need. They know how to make it work over time. I support that. The library, I think, is a real, I mean, I don't know if it could be underappreciated, but I still think it is. If you read about the economic value of libraries, the research tells you there's 2.5 or 6 times the benefit to the local economy than what it costs you to build it. That's because it creates value for families in terms of things to do and having that entertainment value and that research education value. Infrastructure projects, one of the things that we're really missing on Campus Corner is public space. You've probably heard of this. Just a space for you to be and gather with friends and maybe have a little hangout. I mean, downtown's getting a little bit better. The sidewalks are getting better. But on Campus Corner, you literally have to hang out on a narrow sidewalk or essentially in a parking lot. And that's not quite right. We can do a little bit better than that. We can reclaim some of that parking perhaps and create a different parking structure and have some real public space. Think about like a Riverwalk or a more of a plaza area. That's what they're creating for you, is a place for you to stand and watch people, to talk to people. That's really important. Actually, it's an economic engine and builds up those areas. The last thing I want to say is I support bonding. I think I'm not an expert on that, so listen to the experts and what they say is good. But the reason I like a revenue bond, a property tax funded bond, is because we have to go to the voters and ask their permission. So it puts the burden on us as a city to make a good case, to give them good projects that they like. And if we do a good enough job, the voters say yes. And that's a good system. It's not just the city giving you things you may or may not want.
Mr. Jones?
Sorry. Well, at least for one of the most popular things in Ward 4 for quality of life is the Pisces Project. I see a lot of the signs in yards, and there are a lot of people, and I'm sure throughout Norman, that are passionate about the Pisces Project. And that's one of those, we talked about it a couple years ago when we were running for council, and we'll probably talk about it 2 years from now. How to fund something like that. Do you do a private-public partnership? Do you do a bond? Do you do a tax? How do you do this? Everybody in Norman agrees that yes, this would be a great thing to have. But do we have the money, and if so, how do we pay for it? And if we don't have the money, how do we still pay for it? If you want to build what I call an auditorium, it's one of my favorite words in the English language, right now, and it's going to cost $7 million. Well, if we build it 10 years from now, you can expect it to cost at least double. And it's everything, we talked about this last time as well, everything goes up every year, whether it's pension, health insurance, just material costs, labor, everything goes up every year. So the longer it takes for us to find solutions, the more expensive these solutions become. So Pisces Project, you will hear a lot about that during this election campaign because it is very important to Ward 4 voters when something like that gets built. Thank you.
We'll transition back to Ward 2, and we'll start with Mr. Wheel. I can reread that question if that's helpful.
All right.
You got it? Got it? Great.
Quality of life is something that my wife and I really, really have learned to embrace. Specifically in this past few months, my son just turned 3 years old, and as you know, 3-year-olds, that's when they like to get out and teach them how to ride their bikes and take them to the park and stuff. So quality of life is something that we're really, really discovering a whole lot more in depth. And something that I feel is the Pisces Project is a great project. It's something that should be really looked at, and bonding is a good way to do that. Edmond has that water facility up there, and that's really the only place in the state of Oklahoma where they can have state tournaments, state championship tournaments for swimming. Wouldn't that be great if we had something here like that to bring all of those athletes to Norman to see? Also reinvesting in our library. Our library system is just more than a place where you can check out a free book. They have literacy programs. They've got parent-child reading programs that my son just loves. And then also, whenever you take into effect a bicycle pass, me and my son and wife enjoyed that over the weekend, riding our bikes. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do. Obviously, Norman is a festival city, so we have concerts that come to town that bring a great quality of life that we can all enjoy and bring people to spend money. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do to improve our quality of life. And I'm excited to put my ideas in there along with everyone else's to see what we can do.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Well, I think that coming from the background that I have, the thing that is most important to me is making sure that everybody is involved in a very transparent public process to design and figure out the kinds of quality of life projects that are really going to do what we want them to do. As Mr. Leal was saying, to retain a base of people who are interested in being a part of the city, not just because we happen to live here, but because we have chosen to live here and know that there are excellent, excellent opportunities. Now, with that in mind, I think that as long as, speaking to the funding options, I think that there are lots of different ways that we could do it, and I just would want to make sure that if we were to do any sort of incentive to bring in entities or agencies that might want to put these in, that they're borne out not only through a cost-benefit analysis, but also to make sure that it does not disadvantage existing retail in Norman. I really feel like we can do both, but we can't take what we have here already for granted. Opportunities to grow business must be balanced with any incentives for new ones. And that's the only concern that I have as we try to raise the opportunities for various quality of life projects.
Okay.
Well, quality of life and paying for it kind of tough to wrap around being a Christian, because quality of life seems like a personal issue, and I'm a pretty happy guy, regular churchgoer. But somebody, out there looking for fun, bike trails are good. I've got friends that bike around camps all the time. They say it's enjoyable. And I don't think you put a price tag on quality of life. But, we can, I don't know if anybody's ever asked Toby Keith to do a concert in Norman. Last concert I remember was U2. I heard that was a pretty good sized turnout. But just giving people options of things to do for recreation, some people talk about. And any kind of music improvements are always great. The library, can't go wrong there. I have friends that check out movies regular, like a nice quiet night at home with the missus, kids. There's no law says you gotta go out and do something to have fun. And I hope people just take a look inside and just see what really makes them happy. Norman having public transit, you can pretty well go anywhere you want in this town without having to drive yourself. And that alone is a real big blessing. Because I think only two other cities, Oklahoma City and Tulsa, have bus service. So for Norman to have that, it's priceless.
Apparently, I was just speaking with a friend about this yesterday. We have a lifestyle committee or something along those lines in Norman, and she's on it. And so she was informing me, I cannot remember the name of the survey that just came out, but Norman is the #1 city that people choose, or they perceive Norman to be the #1 city in the state of Oklahoma. So that's great for us, right? Yet here we are talking about quality of life issues. And she was telling me that one of the reasons Norman is perceived as #1 is not because of some of these things, but because of what Norman has to offer as far as like the medieval fair, the Norman Music Festival, so that it's a destination place. So I was thinking about this in relation to not just quality of life, but some of our economic development issues. To me, that's good, because that means people are coming into Norman. Yes, they're taking advantage of and using our infrastructure and things like that, but that means they're coming into Norman and spending their money and leaving, which is even better in some ways. So can we combine these things? What does quality of life actually mean? Do we want people to come live here, or do we want people to come spend their money and leave? I mean, we probably want both, right, for economic development and economic growth. In knocking doors and in talking to people in Ward 2, I've heard all the same things that everyone has mentioned here as far as quality of life. Everybody talks about a pool. Everyone's talked about athletic facilities, particularly tournament type of athletic facilities, libraries in particular. I'm on the library board, so I talk about this quite regularly. So I think there's a running theme here. I cannot tell you though that there's a great deal of support for like a MAPS-like bond issue here. I think that's how we would, I think that's the direction the question is leading us in, is to say, can we do that? I don't know that we can do that. I don't know that the public will is quite there yet. It might be, but we would have to build up, I think, considerable public support for something like that, right? Because once again, if Norman is the #1 city in the state of Oklahoma, right now, I don't think that we can make that argument to voters that they should therefore increase their taxes to do that. Anyway, I'm out of time.
Move down to Ward 6, and Councilmember Griffin, same question.
Wow, I'm not sure I could say much more about quality of life issues in Norman that hasn't been said. I mean, quality of life is, you can allude to the quality of our school systems, recreational activities. Someone mentioned a pool. It's kind of ironic that Norman North and Norman High swim teams last year placed 1st and 3rd respectively in state meets, and we don't have a pool. They have to practice at Murray K. Sells, which is a very outdated, dilapidated facility, but no, you're doing the best they can. But the Pisces project, it needs to come forward soon. Norman has a wonderful array of quality of life activities for our citizens and visitors to participate in. Funding has always been the issue. When I was on the Parks Board, I said many times the Parks Board was a stepchild with the budget, because as soon as the budget got tight, the Parks Department was cut, either maintenance or activities, or we really can't afford to do that anymore. We've grown to the point where we need a very, very active revenue stream, predictable revenue stream for our Parks Department, if nothing else. And in terms of quality of life, For example, the city of Fort Collins, many years ago, probably 10 or 15 years ago, took a chance and asked their citizens to vote for a half-cent sales tax to support parks and streets. The projects that were developed were so overwhelmingly supported that they renewed it, and they're in their third renewal. I'm not sure how we can do this, but I would support a sales tax potential because I think that's a predictable form of income that not only do we as citizens of Norman, but all our visitors would help us pay for these quality of life issues. That revenue stream could then also bond some of the more expensive projects, like maybe the Pisces project and others, buying new parkland. But I think we need to work and focus. And then one of the things I want to do is focus on the way we might fund some quality of life issues for our community.
Mr. Lang.
The first thing I wrote down when I heard the question was, for my quality of life, I like a brand new Mustang, that one that just got introduced. Unfortunately, I can't afford it, so my quality of life is going to suffer over the next 2 years while I longingly look every time I drive by a Ford dealer. But the fact of the matter is, we have a good quality of life in Norman. I would like to see a whole series of bike trails all over Norman just because I happen to ride a bike extensively. I mean, I bicycle to school, well, when there's not snow on the ground, I do. But the fact is I don't want anybody else to fund my biking back and forth to work. What I would do is, this goes back to the first budget question, the best way to solve a budget deficit for a franchisee is to raise the sales. Do something to get more sales in, and therefore you can make more profit. Fact is if we as a city were very welcoming to the opening of business, if we were very welcoming to taking care of the businesses that we have now so that they can thrive and get more sales and drive more revenue, because we get the majority of our sales revenue, our revenue for the city from sales tax. And so if we can drive and help the business people drive our economy, we can then start talking about buying the quality of life issues that would make us all happy. I mean, all the way from the Pisces project, which is beautiful. I mean, it's something I wouldn't use because I'm not a swimmer, I'm out on my bicycle. So, but the thing is those things are all affordable if we can drive our sales tax revenue from the standpoint of helping businesses establish. And I think one of the key factors is we had to bring on a person to actually help people get through the jungle of the regulations that we have in Norman as far as just the sometimes anti-business type of activity. So,
Thank you. One more question, we'll provide some closing remarks after that. I'm going to go back down to Ward 2, and we'll start where we started this evening with Mr. Casey, with the question related to water. I think it's something that's being talked about at the state level, at the federal level, and certainly at a local level as well. What is your solution to Norman's long-term water quality problems? Supply, all that supply, water supply to that as well. What is your solution to that, and how would you address that as far as funding related to whatever solution you provide?
Well, from what I've studied, I agree we should try to negotiate a good new trials for a pipeline towards Atoka, and probably take care of the flooding situation, make water like through the good rain, or if it's practical anyway. Just try to save rainwater best as possible, and probably drill more water wells. So I would add water well drill type of person, and it gets real critical during the summer months, trying to ration, even odd days type situation. And hopefully the public can understand the city trying to, that we're going through, and the city trying to work on solutions for that.
Ms. Carson?
Oh, wait, I'm not ready, okay.
I'll ask it again. I stumbled through it the first time.
That's kind of a big
Basically, what
question.
is your solution to Norman's long-term water quality? And then what is your solution to Norman's long-term quantity problems? Since you can't address both of those.
Well, first of all, let me tell you about the water in Chickasha. We're out of water. Quality of water in Chickasha compared to Norman, just so you guys know, so you have some comparison. I mean, it smells bad and it tastes horrible if you've never been in Chickasha. So when I think of like the quality of water in Norman, I'm like, man, I mean, this is it, of course, right? But it's fantastic in Norman. It doesn't smell bad, it doesn't taste bad. I'm not kidding you guys. I mean, go to Chickasha, get some water out of the tap, and you're gonna go, you know what we have in Norman? Beautiful, wonderful, quality water every day of the week. I'm not kidding you guys. And it's just right there, right? You know how close Chickasha is. So there are places in the state of Oklahoma that are not far from us at all that have greater quality issues with water than you would ever imagine. Not that, you know, you're like, that doesn't help us, lady. Sorry, but I want you to know that it's subjective no matter where you are. Our quality issues, I think some of those are being handled as we speak, right? With some of the water issues that we've been dealing with and some of the bond issues that we've passed. I think that we have to start acting like water is an infinite resource, because it's not. I'm not saying that we're gonna run out, but this is what I talk about all the time when I teach. It is not an infinite resource, much like oil is not an infinite resource. There are limits to it. This is something people don't wanna hear, but maybe we should perhaps charge what it's actually worth, which is hard to hear. Nobody wants to pay more for things, but I do think that if we started charging what it's worth, people would use a little bit less of it. Do I have a fantastic suggestion for that? No. Do I have a set rate for that? No. But I do think that if people had to pay more for it, they probably wouldn't use it the way that they currently use it. So those are just a couple of things. I also think that Norman's usage, our innovation in using gray water is fantastic. I think we should continue to do that. I think the city's been fantastic, and we need to work more on the usage, of course. So I'll keep it short.
To me, the water quality in Norman, the water in Norman does taste good, but to me, I mean, I've drank water that was purified out of the Euphrates River. So water here in Norman does taste great to me. There are some things that we can do to improve the quality of water. We can take a better look into a new treatment facility on the north side. The south side facilities, it's getting up there in its use, in its capacity. As far as water supply, there's not going to be one answer. That's going to be something that we're going to have multiple stages and plans of implementation. That's a tough one.
Implementation.
That's it. To achieve drilling wells, you can't just go out and drill wells, unfortunately, because you've got arsenic down there, and you can stir that up. You've got stuff that you can stir up just by going in and drilling more wells. Sitting on the strategic water planning, I was a fan of partnering with Oklahoma City. Instead of being a customer of Oklahoma City, I was a fan of maybe joining in a partnership with Oklahoma City to share into their life that they have. And then also education of our citizens, water conservation, on even watering days. Everyone loves their green lawn, but when we educate people and really show them what we can do when we save our water and what it's going to do for us in the long-term future for our children, because Oklahoma isn't just the only state facing this problem. It's a major part of our country. So education is going to be something that has to be on the forefront of educating people on water conservation, not just making them do it.
Mr. Williams. Well, I think whichever of us four will be elected to serve in the city council seat, if a constituent calls and says, my water quality is horrible, I don't think the answer is, well, it's better than it is in a lot of other places. I think that there are certain times during the summer when it really does taste and smell bad, and the reality is that that is easily treatable. It's just putting the infrastructure in place and figuring out how to pay for it. So one of the things that I was a little perplexed about is I don't know any efforts that Norman is doing in gray water other than allowing individuals 250 gallons per day of gray water to be utilized on their own lawn, so long as it does not flow on somebody else's property. But I think reuse is really where we need to be focusing, and right now, of course, that's not allowed in the state of Oklahoma, so it would require convincing the DEQ and the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, but I really feel like we've got the desire and the drive to say Norman can be a leader. I talked to Megan Benson the other night, who is the daughter of June Benson, one of our most famous female mayors, our most famous mayors anyway. And Megan said, we need big answers. We need big solutions to this, not just a little here and a little there. Reuse is a big solution. It would take a lot of infrastructure, it would take a lot of convincing, but it is, I think, one of the ways that we're gonna make it into the next 50 years. And she said, is there gonna be water for my grandson? That's what I'm concerned about, not if we're gonna have water to water our lawns next week. But reuse has got to be taken in effect with the Sardis Reservoir that we are thinking about and looking at, and also with wells. But the problem is, it's not that arsenic gets stirred up if it's down lower in the well, it's that the longer the water has been there, the easier it is to absorb minerals. And so that tells us that the aquifer is not being recharged. So drilling more wells is not the answer, but water is, this water is to such a degree that the arsenic and chromium, which nobody's talked about, can actually be removed. But again, it's the infrastructure that we're talking about to try to put it together. So I would support a comprehensive solution that would employ aspects of each, but I would like to say not the least of which, of course, is conservation, which is where I started tonight.
Thank you very much. We'll move over to Mr. Eklund, same question.
Yes, several different strategies, a multiple phase approach. We have to have conservation. We have to implement our strategic water supply plan. We have to recharge the Garber-Wellington aquifer. We have to have a good stormwater system in place to protect runoff that might get into our water supply, to minimize the work we have to do to make it better and more quality water. We also have to deal with the arsenic and chromium issues that our community is aware of and has had to deal with, and need to make sure that we are properly and fully dealing with the chromium issue and being transparent with our citizens about how we're dealing with it. I agree we have to implement gray water systems and bring those more to the forefront, and part of that can be through impact fees and rebates and opportunities for developers in using impact fees and better, smarter green growth. We also need to consider looking at importing water to Lake Thunderbird. I believe that's been discussed by some of our council members as a way to have some extra supply there when we need it. And we should secure the supply if we have to through partnerships with other communities to make sure that our citizens are protected. But also, having that quality water supply is important for the growth of our community and the quality of life. What's frustrating about that discussion, just like many of the questions tonight, like quality of life, is these are things that we've been talking about for years. I think everybody in this room would agree. And the question I have from my opponent is, why hasn't he done anything about the Pisces project? I've reviewed all of the minutes from council meetings and I can assure you that Pisces project, for example, has not been mentioned one time from him while he's been on council. I fully support the Pisces project. In fact, the swim coach for Norman High and Norman North has a sign, one of my signs in his yard. We need leadership that solves problems and moves the ball forward. We cannot continue to have a to-do list for the city where we don't scratch anything off of our to-do list. That takes somebody who knows how to bring people together, solve problems, and implement workable solutions. And I am that person.
Mr. Jones.
I do the best I can to keep up with what's going on in Norman on a daily basis, short-term and long-term. And water is a long-term solution. I'm an accountant and not a water expert, so I'll tell you right now, I do not have a solution for you. What I am trusting the city to do is to talk to the people that do know how to solve these problems and work with the state and the county and the federal governments to solve our long-term water issue. I don't know the laws that we are under when it comes to state and federal restrictions. I know that Texas has a lot more money than we do, and they're going to try to buy the same water we're trying to buy. But this is one of those situations where, and Ms. Whitman, you brought up a lot of good points in there, so you just saved me a whole lot of talking. No one in here is a water expert either, so it is something that we did talk about this 2 years ago, we'll be talking about it in the future, and it's encouraging we're talking about it, we do need to find solutions.
Mr. Youngman.
Thank you. We have done some things about water quality in this town. I'm very proud of what we've done. We recently passed a phosphorus control ordinance that will help control the contaminants that run off into our lake. And that the more we have to work to decontaminate what's in the lake, the greater that costs you. That's the more money you have to pay in water rates. So I'm very proud of that accomplishment. On water quantity, we've also done some very, very important work. We not only have we determined different plausible, hopefully affordable strategies to bring more water to Norman, we involved the community in that process. We established a committee of citizens to have input on what they wanted out of a new water supply. I think one of the things we can add to the conversation about water supply, though, is that we're not necessarily running out of water today. And in fact, if you went to recharge the lake today, it would run downstream because the lake is relatively full. We have a peak loading problem. That's the real issue. And today, it's March, we have a lot more water capacity today than we need. But when you get into the summer months, especially dry summer months, heat waves, we peak load the system to 2.5 times what we're using today. And if you're going to peak load a system, you have to build the system at that capacity, but only to use it, say, 10 days out of the year. That's really our problem on quantity. And so we need to think of conservation ordinances, growth pattern decisions that bring the peak loading down. In fact, I would support a policy that requires us to connect our peak loading, the peak loading impact to our growth pattern. Anytime we consider new plats or we consider whether to impose fees on certain types of development, we connect that to peak loading to see that we're actually making a measurable impact on what's really driving our water costs.
Thank you, Mr. Lang.
Okay, a couple of notes. I agree with a lot of what other people are saying. One of the things that I think is, I personalize everything, and I know there's many times that I'm riding on the frontage road behind the shopping centers that are new on my way to Rock Creek Road, and I see during the summertime just streams flowing down the street from a irrigation system, and I'm going, I realize that they're sort of paying for that, i.e. with their water rates, but oh my word, can we not do better than that? And I think encouraging our businesses and our homeowners to have more of a less water dependent landscape would help. And to your point, Mr. Youngman, the fact is we need to encourage people who are building new developments to have water less, start again, to have plants and landscaping that require a lot less water. And then when we see stuff like this, encourage them to change into something that would be more conservative. Gray water changes, be a leader. We need to talk to the Water Resource Board and get gray water approved so that we can use that. California right now is facing, quite a few cities are facing chromium-6 and arsenic problems much worse than ours, and are facing EPA regulations much worse than ours. They have figured the technology out to take that out. I think those are things that we need to look at also. The one thing that we need to do is address the problem right now. I want to end on one thing I don't agree with, is I don't think we need to give up our voting rights of our water rates in Norman to a consortium of cities in central Oklahoma. I think that's one place our citizens can sometimes express their dissatisfaction with what's going on in Norman by voting down some things that we might need. And I think if we could somehow do a good job of making sure the citizens believe what we say when we say we're going to spend something on money, that we end up doing what we say we do.
Councilmember Griffin.
Don't start the clock yet. I got to get my thoughts ordered. This is my passion. Supply. The current plan that I favor is more wells, conservation, and augmenting the lake. That's going to be the most cost-effective and incrementally stepwise plan to implement over the course of the next 50 years. I personally wanted us to buy a reservoir, but that didn't go over well because it's too expensive. Arsenic and chrome. The Chrome-6, which is a most serious concern. What little we have in our water, when we ingest it, it's turned to Chrome-3, which we cannot live without. Arsenic, we're the only city in the state that put together a remediation program for one of our arsenic wells, and it's very successful. It's expensive. Our water rate, the cost of the water goes from about 92 to 95 cents a thousand to about $1.50 a thousand. We've looked at the possibility of taking those wells that have arsenic problems and either funneling that water into a creek that goes to Lake Thunderbird, which would help augment our supply, or build a larger arsenic remediation facility that would take care of those wells and bring them back. There's currently a plan in place to improve production and increase capacity at our water treatment plant. We have solutions for the odor and taste, which is arsenic and UV treatment of the water, which would eliminate the chlorine that's now presently used, which is dangerous. I knew that was going to happen. But it's all going to be about our ratepayers. We have to go to our ratepayers with solid plans that will prove to our folks that we have solutions in mind. 2 years ago, we asked for a water rate increase, and it's my understanding it failed because we wanted to allocate some of that funding to participate in the trust that Oklahoma City's put together. It's probably a mixed blessing. They want to be the water czar for the central region. We presently have permission to tap into the Atoka pipeline, okay, which would give us more water, but okay, I'll shut up.
I just wanted to say I appreciate how the council member lowers his voice at the end, thinking they'll buy more time.
Couple more minutes.
Well, again, appreciate each and every single one of you. I know that I have a whole stack of questions that we were not able to get to tonight, so I would ask that if our candidates would mind staying around, and maybe some individual questions that we didn't get to that an individual participant will want to come and ask you. So I ask you to stay around, but before we do that, I do want to provide some time. We'll probably start with Ward 4 here in just a second so that they can go ahead and give Ward 6 a break from their political comments. We'll save it for last. But if I can, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Councilmember Greg Degman to start with some 2 minutes of closing comments.
Thank you. First of all, just thank you to the Chamber, to John and Andy, and all the Chamber staff for putting this together. If you heard what I heard, you heard a lot of shared vision from all of the panelists today, with a lot of common ground here to tap into for the future. And I can speak directly for the fact we have a lot of common ground with the odd number of ward council members as well. I think that our future as a community is very strong. Just to make a brief closing comment, the one thing I would like to end on is just a thank you to my neighbors and my friends all across Ward 4. I think if I'm getting any credit at all, I'm not sure how much, if I'm getting any credit at all, it's too much, because what I have accomplished on council is simply a reflection of all of the great input I've got. There's not been a single issue where I've felt alone in standing up for what the opinions of Ward 4 are. So we talk about high density. I got to thank Ellen and Steve and Cheryl and Jamelia. Convening meetings in their living room so people can share their ideas and figure out the best vision for them. Talk about our lighting rules. I have to thank Larry and Eileen, who literally brought resources to bear for me to help use to help the council have the most possible informed decision. And on development issues, I got to thank Cindy and Jane and Jeanette for giving me great input, helping me understand the issues and how they feel. So really, it's my job has been for the last 2 years, and I hope for 2 more, is to take those opinions and reflect them back to the community, reflect them to my fellow council members. That's the most important thing that I do. That's what I promise to do if I get reelected.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this evening. There are some more forums coming up. Got a letter from Roger Gallagher recently. That's a new forum this year. I'm hoping there's a couple more forums that I haven't received notice on yet that might pop up. I really enjoyed the conversation. Being from Norman, I grew up in Ward 2, Monroe Elementary, Whittier and West. And it's very important to me who represents Ward 2. My mother just bought a house in Ward 6, so it's important to me on who represents Ward 6. I live in Ward 4, it's important to me that I live, on who represents this. And I really would sincerely appreciate everybody sitting up here taking a part of this process. It costs $50 to get in, put in your voice, and have an effective educational discussion on where this city is going. I'm proud of this city. My family is proud of this city. I plan on being here for many, many, many more decades. 2 years from now, we will have some of these same discussions when I'm running again. I encourage everybody running this year to also run again in 2 more years regardless of outcome. It's good for the city. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I want to thank the Chamber, everybody, for being here tonight and being engaged. And knocking on doors, it invigorates me. Hearing the people tell me that they need me. They want new leadership. They need leadership on council for the veterans, the individuals that are disabled, the elderly. They need someone to stand up and to speak for them and to help them because they're not getting any help. They're not friends of Greg, and so they don't have his ear. I want to represent all of the citizens of Ward 4. And effective leadership means you have to be engaged and you have to be there. Since February 11th, Councilman Youngman has missed 3 out of 10 meetings, 70% of the time he's there. Now, in school, that's a C-. And for me, as an employee, I would probably have to fire that person if they only came 3.5 days a week. He's had to recuse himself and abstain from votes more than every other council member combined. I believe it's about 72 times. That means he's not voting for critical, important things for our ward, some of which are housing, like high density. How do we know he's going to be able to vote on high density issues that come before council when he's having to recuse so often because of his job with the federal government? The funding might be through the federal government. 2 out of 3 times that there's a split vote on council, he's on the losing side of the vote. That reflects an inability to bring people together and lead. The question is, what has he authored and brought forward to council, and has it been voted on and approved that he can hang his record on? Claiming victory for everything that council has done is not what you have accomplished. That is not your record. That is not leadership. For high density, for example, he didn't get that taken care of. What happened was the University of Oklahoma, this is in the minutes, asked for it to be pulled from his committee, and it's still going on through the city center visioning opportunity. We may have high density still in our neighborhoods. He didn't get it taken care of. And I'll tell you one last thing. Recycling paper is a good thing. But recycling your promises from 2 years ago to the citizens just shows you were ineffective. You have the same things to do and you didn't get anything accomplished. I will not be that way. Vote for Hickman and you will get real leadership and change.
Thank you. Go back down to Ward 6 real fast, and we'll make our way to Ward 2 to finish up this evening. I'm going to go ahead and start with Councilmember Griffin, please.
I'll be brief. The last 5.5 years I've been on council have been probably some of the most rewarding in my life. I've been able to participate in policy decisions that have helped move the city forward. And the most important, those have been very rewarding, and the controversial ones have been the most fun. But what's I've enjoyed the most, and I tell people this every day, is the one-on-one interaction with my constituents. When somebody calls me or contacts me with an issue or concern, if it's as simple as a stop sign at an intersection where construction trucks are running through the intersection and endangering lives, to get that traffic control put in place just because I ask a question. I ask questions of staff, and the other thing, of course, is working with the city staff. They're some of the most dedicated and loyal people that you'll ever meet. I ask questions of problems, and I have never ever been stonewalled or turned away without a solution. Now, it may not be the solution my constituent wanted, but it was a solution and an answer they got, and it was an understandable one. But getting things done, 3 months into my first term, I got curb and gutters put on a street where funding had run out. There were cost overruns that wouldn't allow it to happen. Our public works director looked at some other projects, and Councilmember Kovacs was generous enough to defer one that was in his ward to get that done. Those are the little things that mean the most to me. There's going to be a signal on Rock Creek Road in 2016 because people were complaining about a dangerous intersection. Well, the traffic was good enough to put up a warning sign to let people know that this is a dangerous intersection. You need to slow down because the speed limits on Rock Creek, albeit it's 40 miles an hour. Most people drive between 50 and 60. It's a nice road. But anyway, what's rewarding to me is working with staff. It's been working with my constituents and working with my council members. Thank you.
Mr. Lang.
I want to thank everybody for being here again and thank the council for the invitation. In going out and about, my main source of promoting my campaign has been knocking on doors. And I'll tell you what, it's really confirmed the reason why my family lives here, I think, is even the people who didn't want to spend any time with me were still nice about it. And, so Norman is such a special place. I want to help keep it a special place. I think I bring a unique skill set in that with my business background of some 27 years of having to meet a budget and to help people with sales and profits. And then in the last 10 years dealing with third graders and third grade parents, I think it's really provided me with the wherewithal that I can talk to people who are emotional, talk to people who have specific problems, and we can try to come to a mutually agreeable solution. I have to admit that I think there's always a solution to a problem. You just have to get the smart people together who know the answer and let them do their work. One of the things that I think that I can do is help clear the way for people to do what they're best at. And that's what I like the opportunity to do. And so I would ask everybody for their vote if you're in my ward. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Go ahead, Mr. Casey, and we'll start closing remarks and work our way back this direction.
Thank the Chamber of Commerce for having us forum, and got some great people. Hopefully we can elected, and want to make some issues that are critical to our city. Hope we can bring some more comments back to Norman specifically. I know some restaurants have left Norman that used to be here, like Godfather's and Dairy Queen, and pretty much have to drive to Kansas to find either one of them. But, yeah, just hope I can bring some solutions to the city council and hope people can see if we work to. Thank you.
Ms. Carter.
Thank you for caring enough about Norman and the democratic process to come tonight. It's not easy after a long day of work to show up at an event like this. I'm fully aware of that, so I appreciate your presence. I believe in representative government. I think that it's important, and I think that I have something to offer, and I hope that you guys think so too after tonight and after your attendance at multiple forums this month. And I hope that you'll at least think about voting for me and employ your friends in Ward 2. I don't see a whole lot of people in Ward 2 out there tonight, but I see a few of you. So please tell your friends about your attendance here tonight and encourage them to vote as well. Thanks.
I want to thank the Chamber for having us this evening. Thanks to all the candidates for being here. Some great ideas that I've heard. Thanks to everybody who's stuck around. I've seen a lot of you at council meetings, so I know you can stick it out for that long. One thing I want you to leave you with is a word that it really means a lot to me, and it's leadership. It's something that I learned from my father, a Vietnam veteran, something that was reinforced in me in the United States Army, and it's something that I live by and try to teach my son the best I know how. Having a strong leader in Ward 2 is something that's going to be very important in the upcoming years. We're going to say goodbye to somebody who was a great leader and still is in the ward. He's done some good things. Probably the biggest is the fixing of Lake McGee after all these years. So leadership is something that is really close to my heart. And I'm not new to leading. If anything, I would say that I'm a proven leader in the troops that I've led, in the family that I lead, and then the co-workers that I set an example for every day. And that's what I want to do, is I want to set a positive example for the city of Norman, and I want to make sure that they're led in the right direction, and I want Ward 2 to lead from the front.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Well, I don't think that we tonight could say too many times thank you to the Chamber for organizing this event, and thank you all for coming and really helping us to codify our messages and understand a little bit more about the way that we're going to move Norman forward. I'd like to thank my opponents, all candidates here especially, but my opponents, because I really feel like this is a strong field, and I am very honored to sit in this same area with you, knowing that one of us will help to lead the city. I want to mention that we're opponents, not enemies. Just like I said before, we are neighbors, and we all care, as you have heard tonight, about the city of Norman. Like that 5-hour meeting that you and I walked out of at the end, we're like, what are we doing? But we do. It's obvious that we all care. I feel like I have a record of bringing people together on important issues through my work in town hall activities in the Xenia Institute, and also the conflict resolution and dialogue that I did in that capacity. And I feel like now I'm trusted with public money and have demonstrated success with important causes like the work I'm doing now at the Mary Abbott Children's House. But you don't have to take my word for it. You can investigate the work that I do by looking at all of the public documents. You can listen to people talk around town about the work that I've done and how I've helped to bring people together who you never think would be in a room together to work on issues that are important to everybody. And so if you are in Ward 2, I ask for your vote. And if you are not, I ask for your support. This broad support that I'm getting is really overwhelming. And I will say one of the most enjoyable things is I tell people that this campaign has allowed me to institutionalize something that I enjoy very much, which is talking to people and going around to doors and talking to people about very, very important issues. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. You'll join me just real quick in a round of applause. I just want to say thank you to each and every single one of you. I'm very, very appreciative of all the time that you've given tonight and will as you continue on during the campaign and certainly within the city council as well. A couple of things just want to again mention, and there are some other questions I know that are out there. Please feel free to come up afterwards, and we'll make sure that we provide maybe a couple of minutes of our time to answer those as best we can. I also want to mention that the Chamber of Commerce surveyed the candidates as well with many more issues than obviously we have time to discuss this evening. So we'll release those answers at a later date, certainly before the election, and the upcoming couple of 3 weeks, and we'll make sure that that's out there. I also want to mention that, again, I know many of us in the room are already chamber members in support of the Chamber of Commerce. I get to say this is the lead volunteer for this year, but we're in the middle of a membership drive. So if you're not, we certainly appreciate that. And candidates and everyone else in the room, we look forward to having you as a chamber member. Again, we're over 1,500 business members strong, and over 2,500 individuals. So the third largest chamber of commerce in the state of Longland. I think that speaks highly of the community within Longland. So continue. We ask for your support. We ask for your membership. And thank you again for being here tonight, and we'll see you soon.